Welcome to the 775 Alive podcast, your rural Nevada headquarters for decoding politics, economics, and general global shenanigans. I'm Crystal Newton, your business strategist, breaking down why Nevada's hustle is stronger than a sagebrush root in a windstorm. Here with my trusty co-host, Scott Gaborski, PhD historian, here to explain the smart lessons of history, even if we are likely to ignore them. Grab your boots for a wild ride through today's most important news.
Las Vegas, Nevada, it's time for straight talk and real solutions.
We're breaking down the issues that matter to you with no spin, just the truth.
From the Strip to Main Street,
we're keeping it real for hard-working Americans.
This is Talk with a Conservative, open conversation with intelligent explanation.
Las Vegas and Nevada, let's talk. Welcome to Talk with a Conservative. I'm Garland Brinkley, and I ran for Assembly District 1 in 2022 here in Nevada, and I ran again for Assembly District 1 in 2024, also here in Nevada. I'm a retired university professor, and I taught economics, and I taught epidemiology and biostatistics for over 30 years.
And I'm Patricia Brinkley, who ran for Senate District 1 in 2024. And I'm an attorney at law with over 27 years of solo practitioner. And welcome to Season 2, Episode 13, Lucky 13 of Talk with a Conservative. Our telephone number is 702-221-7283. We'll be digging into big issues with insight, honesty, and a conservative perspective.
Let's get to it.
If you're unable to get through on the telephone line at 702-221-7283, please email your questions to twackradioshow@gmail.com. If your question is received before the end of today's show, we'll answer it. Otherwise, we'll address it at the beginning of our next show. Tonight, we will not be having a question of the day because we are joined by special guests that we've been talking about for over the past month. Please welcome from 775 Alive, Dr. Scott Gaborski and Crystal Newton. Please welcome.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
It's so good to be here.
Oh, it's great to have you. And so we're going to be digging into some issues related to urban versus rural areas. But before we do so, we have some other things we need to get to. So,
calling all candidates. Any candidate who would like to be a co-host with us once or twice a month, contact us to learn details. And so you know, David Flippo, retired Lieutenant Colonel David Flippo, is our guest host tonight. So he's here. And Dave, welcome.
Hey, this is going to be a great show because, as you know, I'm running for CD4, and this is going to be a big rural focus. And with Scott and Crystal here, it's going to be amazing. So if you're out there in the rurals, turn the radio up, and we're going to talk about some rural issues.
Remember, the number is 702-221-7283, and put that on your speed dial so you can call right in. Also, we do shout-outs. We know you celebrate birthdays, at least I used to, anniversaries, birth of a child, new job, those kinds of things. So if you want to celebrate those, we will actually say what the event is on air. And we'll do that 3 times. Our next meeting at the Conservative Town Hall of North Las Vegas will be Thursday, December 4th.
And that's this Thursday.
That's this Thursday. It's from 11:30 to 1:30 at 1870 West Craig Road, North Las Vegas. We'll be hosting our 3rd annual Christmas party and toy drive for children in Clark County foster care. Come join us, bring a friend or two, bring unwrapped toys and books for children under 12, and gift cards and books for teens. We want to promote reading is fundamental. Remember to bring a friend or two, bring unwrapped gifts, and RSVP for this no-host lunch.
And this evening, guests will also be attending our town hall on Thursday. So you get to meet Crystal and Scott in person. So make sure you RSVP. So,
yeah, last month, there were some people that didn't RSVP, so the poor waitress was running around with 42 people trying to take all the orders and get the receipts out. And fortunately, everyone waited to pay, so thank you all.
Yes, thank you. So we don't want to go through that again. So please RSVP. And already we have, I think, 27 people have already RSVP. So again, this evening we have two special guests, Crystal Newton and Dr. Scott Gavorski, host of the podcast 775 Alive, along with Dave Flippo for CD4. And we're going to go to a commercial. You're listening to Talk with a Conservative.
Las Vegas, it's time for straight talk and real solutions.
We're breaking down the issues that matter to you.
From the Strip to Main Street, we're keeping it real for hard-working Americans.
With no spin, just the truth.
Las Vegas and America.
This is Talk with a Conservative. Open conversation with intelligent explanation.
Let's talk.
Talk with the Conservative, Monday nights at 7 p.m. with your hosts, Garland and Patricia Brinkley on KSHP 107.1 FM and AM 1400.
Skip your cable bill this month and join the action with JB and Fubo TV. Get 7 days free, 15% off your first month, no credit check, no deposit, no installation hassle. Go to FuboTV.com/JB. Sign up, download the app, and start watching games.
Enjoy being a subscriber after the first month. Easy cancellation anytime. Regional restrictions apply. Sign up at VegasScoreboardExpress.com.
You're tuned in to Talk with a Conservative, where reason still rules and free speech still matters.
It's time to cut through the noise and get back to what really matters. Let's talk.
Okay, so again, our guests this evening are Crystal Newton and Dr. Scott Gavorski, hosts of the podcast 775 Alive. We will be discussing world and local affairs impacting rural Nevada, the region covered by the area code 775. I didn't realize that too.
Yeah, that was a large part of the joke, is because that covers pretty much everything outside of Clark County.
Yes.
There's more than the 702.
Yeah.
Just saying.
Okay, so Crystal, you are a businesswoman and you run a nonprofit. Can you briefly share your background with our audience?
Yeah, I'd love to. I spent 20 years traveling the country, specializing in emerging industries, which is kind of a unique career path, but it's a special skill set to be able to bring a product that's never existed before into reality. And you do a lot of interfacing with governments and attorneys, and you figure out how the law is really built, how regulations really work. It's been a really fun career. And then when I turned 33, I came to Nevada and I fell in love. I never thought of myself as a rural person, but I've spent the last 8 years in the far, far north of the state, and I couldn't be more in love with the place.
Okay.
Do you have any livestock, animals? Just curious.
No, I do have an agricultural dealership, so I get to go see baby cows and all the livestock quite often, but that's not exactly my deal.
Well, you know, Garland, during his youth, grew up on a farm on the summers with his grandparents, so he has images of that in his mind still.
Okay, so you're cooler than me, Garland.
Oh.
Yeah.
I sympathize with people in the rural areas because that's hard work. I mean,
Yeah.
It smells bad, it's dusty, it's dirty, things like that. I mean, it's like, it's not easy. I never could, there's a dairy farm I was on. I could never figure out why cows did not like to sleep late. They like to be there at 4:30 in the morning to get milk. Just like, hey guys, they don't wear watches. How do they know what time it is? It's like, take a nap, but never.
Okay, and so Scott, you have a consulting firm, and in addition, you have a PhD. I believe it's in French.
Yeah, it's in French history, modern European history, and dear listeners, you should know when we Crystal and I had dinner with the Brinkleys last month. Crystal and Patricia made Garland and I promise we wouldn't have academic discussions on the air, so we're going to keep it light.
Oh, no, because tonight we're here. This is a brain trust. We have a PhD in economics. We have a PhD in French history. We have a JD in law, and we have a entrepreneur businesswoman. And we have a retired lieutenant colonel with us. So yeah, we can figure out all the issues of this of the world right now.
And solutions.
Yeah, yeah. So, like I said, we have no specific question of the day. However, this evening our topic is rural versus urban. And I'm a urban girl, grew up in San Francisco, went to New York for a while, came back to San Francisco and lived in the Bay Area all my life until 5 years ago when we moved here. So I'm urban, and everyone else? Dave, are you urban or rural?
Well, you know, I spent my high school years on a farm in Virginia, so I've lifted plenty of bales of hay back before they had the big round balls of hay. So, but some little bit of both. Lived all over.
Dear Uncharted, the Toyota Tacoma doesn't need lines on a map. It follows the unfollowed, the untamed, the unseen. Tacoma's available iForce Max engine charts its own path, and an available 3D multi-terrain monitor has your back. So wherever adventure leads is where it all begins. Find yours at Toyota.com. Toyota, let's go places.
For accredited investors who follow emerging consumer trends, the zero-proof spirits category has been showing consistent momentum. Over the past few years, alcohol-free spirits have grown at a double-digit pace. As more consumers look for full flavor options without alcohol, retailers have responded by expanding shelf space and bringing in more premium alternatives. Within that broader shift, RK Zero Proof is one of the early brands offering a full lineup of non-alcoholic spirits: whiskey, vodka, rum, gin, tequila, and others. The category has moved beyond niche interest and is increasingly driven by consumers who want flexibility rather than abstinence. RK has established global distribution and a portfolio that scales easily, which positions the company to participate in the category's continued growth. The company has opened investment discussions under Rule 506C, available only to verified accredited investors. As with any investment, there is risk, including possible loss of principal, and offering materials are available upon request. More information can be found at rkzeroproof.com/investinrk. That's ARKAY zeroproof.com/investinrk.
Okay. So, let's see. First, let's discuss the evolution of the big cities. Anyone want to jump into that?
Ooh, that's a big topic, because one of the things we did, and one of the things we're interested in about this podcast, is really exploring that divide between rural and urban, or urban and rural, however you want to phrase that, really is a defining characteristic, and it's one that is roiling Nevada politics right now. So, for example, currently the state of Nevada defines rural as any county less than 100,000 people. So there's no other characteristic outside of that. Out of the 15 rural counties, of course, Clocker and Washoe are over 100,000. We comprise about 11% of the population, right? So about 1 in every 9 voters, give or take. But on the Republican side, those 15 rural counties count for about 18.5% of registered Republicans. So we're 1 in 6 of the Republican voters. And then in the 2022 election, we were just under 20% of Governor Lombardo's vote. So we cast 1 in 5. And that's been one of the issues, is that the rurals sort of show up, with elections. But most of the rest of the time, we do really get a sense that, we're not a major factor in policy, which is a shame.
Is the turnout higher in rural areas?
Yeah, that's a big problem. Or not problem if you're a Republican, problem if you're a Democrat. Yeah, so Elko County and Lyon County both have dropped a bit in turnout, but that's because automatic voter registration is capturing a lot of people who wouldn't have voted 20 years ago. So it's playing with the numbers a bit. But Elko is posting 80% turnout in the presidential election. Eureka County, just sort of southwest of us, was over 90% turnout.
Wow.
So it's high.
Callers, our number is 702-221-7283. So, as far as the big cities, how did they evolve? I would say that, going back in ancient history, there have always been big cities, like think of Rome, Babylon, but also, right now in current history, I would say the Industrial Revolution is what created the large cities that we now have. Mm-hmm. Crystal?
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about two different things now compared to history. So nowadays, people that live in rural areas are there by choice. They go out of their way to make that choice. And cities, I mean, just, you know, you can almost look at it like a factory line. The more people you have, the more you can share costs with things like transportation. You get to drive shorter distances. It's in general cheaper to live in a city, which is probably the main reason why cities have gotten to be as big as they are. And then, of course, the federal government started adding all sorts of grants and incentives that help, you know, fuel that. But I think by and large, what do you think, Scott? I think rural is pretty much a choice at this point.
Yes and no. I mean, historically, you know, we had classical world, Babylonia, Greece, Rome. Those were predominantly urban cultures, right? But by the time we get into medieval history, pretty much most of the population is rural. And in the United States, it was only the 1920 census where more people lived in cities than lived out in the countryside. So we're barely just over 100 years into this idea where urbanity have really defined the American culture. Before then, it was always farms. Go ahead.
No, I don't want to cut you off. Go ahead. Finish your sentence.
No, it's yeah, and I think this is one of the problems that goes on. I was talking with Garland earlier. I did some work in the past 2020 census. I was a tribal partnership specialist at the Census Bureau, and I've kept up on some of the demographic stuff. And one of the interesting things to me is that the federal government doesn't really have a definition of rural. All their definitions are based on levels of dense population, levels of urbanity, right? And rural is just sort of stuff that's not that. And that creates a lot of problems because the perception is, even if people live out by choice, as Crystal was saying, one of the issues people have is this perception that the rurals are old, the rurals are dying, they're not someplace we need to invest in, right? Anymore. But one of the things I'd like to point out is, for instance, Elko County is actually the youngest county in the state by both population under 18 and median age, which is only 34. The second youngest is Humboldt County, where Crystal is.
Oh, that's interesting.
Okay, I want to bring Dave into this conversation. CD4 provides a blueprint in how the needs of the rural areas are addressed while implementing services specific to urban areas. So, Dave, what are the differences that you see in CD4 when you're out there campaigning?
Yeah, that's a great question because CD4 is a dynamic district because of the, Clark County being the urban county, and then the 6 other counties out there within CD4. So I've got 7 counties total. 6 of them are rural. It's Mineral County, Churchill County, Lyon County, Esmeralda County, Nye County, and Lincoln County. Those are all in CD4. So there's a big dichotomy there between the urban side and the rural side. And how do we work with both of those dynamics, right? Because there's different issues in both those areas. When you go out to the rurals, their big issues are like healthcare, right? Access to healthcare. And I talk to people here in Clark County and they're like, oh, we need more hospitals and all these things, that there's not enough care. There's, cancer treatment centers that we need and things like that here in the big city. But if you take that into the rural counties, they're just trying to find a doctor, right? So there's a huge difference, between what healthcare is here in Clark County versus healthcare in the cities. Other issues that they have in the rurals is traffic safety, the highway safety out there. That's a big issue for them, along with the BLM management and, things like that. So things that are in common is the economy, right? Everybody's concerned about the economy. Everybody's concerned about energy costs. Everybody's concerned about the cost of living. So there's some things that are similar, but then even when we talk about healthcare, there's 2 dynamics to healthcare when you're talking the rurals in Clark County.
Well, with healthcare, I'll let Garland address that, but we all know that there is there's insufficient number of doctors here in Nevada, just to start off with. Right. So whether you're urban or rural, you're having a problem finding a doctor. But go ahead.
That's true. Is there an issue with water in the rural counties?
Well, we're in Nevada, right? So,
yes, we get the least rainfall of anybody.
So water's always an issue. There's good aquifers here in Nevada and stuff like that. But that is one of the issues that I'm working with Lauren Boebert and Paul Gosar, Congresswoman Boebert and Congressman Gosar. She's in Colorado and he's down in Arizona. And we want to work on that together and create a coalition, a Colorado River caucus, right? Because there needs to be something done up in D.C. to help with the water issues. Right now, we're working off of a 101-year-old law that exists right now. And I think there's probably more than 6 people that live in Nevada right now versus 100 years ago. And it's time to change some things. There's things like desalination plant solutions. There's things like reservoir building, especially on the Colorado side of the Rockies. Denver pulls water from the Colorado River, right? If they could get some reservoirs up there, and this is one of the things that Congresswoman Boebert and I are talking about, get some reservoirs there, and then they could save some money on the Colorado. So there's lots of water issues that we need to solve.
Yeah, I think Phoenix also has like a canal that takes water from the Colorado to Phoenix. It's like 300 and some odd miles long.
Yeah, in fact, the last 50 miles of the Colorado River is dry. Yeah, so it's pretty much all taken out. And can I just paint a picture for the listeners? David is flanked by 2 rurals and 2 urbans during this conversation, and he is cool as a cucumber. I love this.
I'm in the hot seat right now.
You started to step into the water issue. I was like,
Callers, our number is 702-221-7283. So let's discuss government. When we think of urban areas, we have more of a big government feel versus the rural areas, small government. Discuss services offered, public safety, social services, education, housing, jobs, affordability, etc., etc. I mean, there are a multitude of issues that impact both areas.
Well, first I'm going to say we don't have Uber yet.
You're right.
Oh, no.
No, we do not. Yeah. I'm going to let Crystal talk about education a bit more here in a minute, but I would think a couple things to bear in mind is where I think the government impact is going on in the rurals right now is really the issue with we can't afford the infrastructure, right? A lot of how stuff is set up to influence urban areas has really made it too expensive for rural communities to undertake their own projects, whether that be roads, whether that be schools, whether that be hospitals. They have to depend on outsiders, and that's where you run into that perception of this myth of the dying rurals, as I called it. Why are we going to invest in schools when, another 15, 20 years, you're not going to have kids out there, right? Tonopah is a great example, right? That elementary school where they are shutting whole classrooms down because the roof was leaking. And the perception was we're just not gonna fix it. Remember another problem we have in Nevada generally is that the state legislature and the state government exercises outsized influence on everything from commerce tax collection that's then parceled back to the communities, decisions that we would like to undertake ourselves don't happen. David and I have talked a little bit about the effort in the 2023 legislative session to import Las Vegas prevailing wages into projects in the rurals, which would have made them basically unable to be built because that would just raise the cost. We're at the end of supply chains. We just saw that up on the Duck Valley Reservation with the Owyhee School. There's just no way to get the materials in cheaply, right? And those are the issues that we're really sort of struggling with out in the rurals, is that people from an urban perspective that dominate the government don't really understand the problems we're doing, right?
Callers, I know you have questions, or maybe you might want to comment about why you prefer living in Las Vegas. And when you're listening to Talk with a Conservative.
The Radio Shopping Show, a unique and fun way to enjoy incredible savings on the products and services you buy every day. We pioneered the Radio Shopping Show in 1981, and since then, tens of thousands of people have saved literally millions of dollars. Visit KSHP.com and learn how to save 40, 50, 60, 70% or even more on the products and services you buy every day. Visit KSHP.com and live large for less.
You're listening to Talk with a Conservative, where tradition meets truth. Stay with us. More truth, more insight, and more straight talk coming up next.
So, Scott, there was an issue that you wanted to go back to that we had talked about. Mm-hmm. We haven't completed the topic, but go ahead.
Well, no, I was just talking here on the break a bit about urban and rural issues and what's shared and what's not shared. And one of the things that I think that goes on quite a bit is that we have Republicans have traditionally been good speaking about values. We're conservatives. We have values, right? And a lot of those values tend to center around those urban areas or rural areas and those rural ideas. And we tend to abandon the field for the urban audiences. And one of the problems that has is that there's actually some shared stuff that we don't think about that Republicans are really going to have to start discussing. And the example I always give is the issue of food deserts, which you hear about in an urban environment. Certain sectors of town, there's no grocery stores. We see this now with, what's going on in Seattle with the threat to keep grocery stores open, although I'm not sure how the eminent domain is ever going to work on that. But we also have Esmeralda County, an entire county in Nevada that does not have a single grocery store in it, right? And we've only gotten the rural reservations. Only the Duck Valley Reservation up there on the Idaho-Nevada border has a grocery store on it. So we have massive rural food deserts. The problem is we've abandoned that food desert issue in urban environments to a Democratic narrative that says it's all about race, right? There's no grocery stores there because they want this group of people to starve. How do you explain that with an overwhelmingly white Esmeralda County, right? You maybe can make the argument for Native American communities as well. But what I see is the reason those stores don't exist, you don't have access to capital for local owners. You don't have the law and order security to keep them open. In the rural areas, you're often at the end of supply chains. If you're on a reservation, capitalization doesn't work the same way because of sovereign state status. Capitalization, law and order, supply chain. All those are dominant Republican issues that cut across a broad swath. So I guess part of what I'm wondering is why aren't we talking about that?
Because most of us live in urban areas, and we don't talk about it.
Dear Uncharted, the Toyota Tacoma doesn't need lines on a map. It follows the unfollowed, the untamed, the unseen. Tacoma's available iForce Max engine charts its own path, and an available 3D multi-terrain monitor has your back. So wherever adventure leads is where it all begins. Find yours at Toyota.com. Toyota, let's go places.
When your auto insurance shows up, every call, every claim, every day, that's a win. J.D. Power has ranked AAA #1 for auto insurance customer satisfaction in the Southwest 2 years running. Get a quote at AAA.com/quote. Visit JDPower.com for details.
Well, let me ask this question. It's probably not on point to what you were just talking about, Scott, but what is the impact of today's culture, if any, on the rural areas? Crystal?
Oh, man. I'm going to have to ask David to jump in here in a minute, but that can be a big or a very small topic, right? Rural tends to be a bit isolated. I'm actually pretty impressed with the parents out in the rural areas. They're very strict about giving phones to their kids. They insist that they go learn how to hunt, how they learn how to make stuff, how to grow stuff. I'm very impressed with it. So they seem pretty resilient. And I think they're fine as people. They do a great job building a community, but they are under enormous pressure with things like federal grants targeting larger populations. We don't have access to a lot of the funds and the money and the economy that people typically have. But, and from a larger sense, you could say that would be American culture kind of leaning in and putting pressure on rural communities. What do you think, David?
Yeah. So, I would say that when you're talking about the rurals, you're talking about independent culture. An independent culture takes care of themselves, grows their own food, does things like that. And one of the, if you look at 100 years ago plus, people went into the big cities for safety, right? I mean, that's why you had these larger, cultural areas was for the safety of that. And, so now what cities have turned into, in my opinion, are these dependency vacuums where a lot of the communities and the cultures within big cities are dependent on others, whether it's food or or any of those kinds of things. Most cities can only survive for 3 days without resupply. Mm-hmm. That's pretty dependent. Yeah. And so we put ourselves into a position where, like, if the food supply were to cut off in 4 or 5 days, well, we'd be having who knows what kind of problems. But guess where the problems wouldn't be? Right. Out there in Elko and out there in Lyon County.
Unless you're a prepper.
Well, I'm just here to say, if everything falls down after you guys not supporting the rurals, don't come out here trying to get food and stuff, because... Yeah,
I see.
Scott wanted to say something.
No. This is really good. And if we take culture a little bit more broadly, Garland's probably familiar with the concept of political culture, right? How decisions get made. We did an episode on swing states and why Nevada's a swing state. And all the swing states actually are, the 7 swing states all have large urban populations, but also a very large and extensive rural population as well. Right? So Nevada looks a lot like Pennsylvania and Wisconsin and Michigan. But what's interesting is I think this independence plays out in different ways. In rural areas, I work a lot with rural nonprofits in my consulting business, either doing outreach or board training or this type of stuff. They set up the nonprofit to do something, right? We want to set up a food bank. We want to set up programs for teenagers. We want to do X, Y, and Z. I think a lot of times in urban areas, nonprofits and this type of political culture is set up for groups to advocate the government to do something. And I think that's actually a huge change. In some ways, it frustrates people in the rurals because, like, why can't we get stuff done? But at the same time, we also sort of miss out on stuff because a lot of times we don't understand that the urban game is based on influencing people to get stuff done instead of doing it yourself.
So,
well, I'm going to hop in real quick.
I was going to ask something, but
a lot of it goes back to the survival too, though. So, like, when you have, out in the rurals, if you run out of something, you find a way to get it, right? Here, the problem with the big cities that I see is, and what Scott's talking about is the government's providing the handouts, right? So who's accountable to who? Right. And so the people receiving the handouts, they don't see, it's not a nonprofit they're going to, it's not a church that they're going to. And you lose some of that community because it's just the government. It's just free money. It's not anybody else's money. It's the government's money. But out in the rurals, you see that as that's Joe's money that he donated to the church or to the foundations or to the nonprofits. And there's more accountability out there because when you're holding your hand out and there are those that need help, but it's a hand up and not a lifestyle.
Unfortunately, I'll put it that way. With government, they take money from people and they give it out, but they take a cut of it. Mm-hmm. So they keep some of it, to do the distribution administration of it. And so when it finally gets to the person, it's like half of it's gone because they paid someone just to keep track of it.
It's worse than that, Garland. It's actually worse than that.
Yeah, right.
I mean, you guys know that I help Shine a Light Foundation with going into the tunnels and helping the homeless, and that's a foundation that does not take government money. They refuse government money because they don't want their hands tied, right? And they operate on about a $350,000 budget year, and they get more people off the streets than the government agencies that get millions of dollars. Right. Now, where is that millions going to? It's going to a building that they have to work out of. It's going to vehicles so that they can get to wherever the homeless are. It's going to all this infrastructure. So 70 or 80% of the costs that the government's giving these to go towards the homeless is being absorbed by administrative costs, and it's not getting to who it needs to get to.
And that's, DOGE has been very successful early on this year and sort of exposing that a lot of these nonprofits getting government grants, the amount that are absorbed in administrative and overhead costs is far in excess than what we see in just your normal run-of-the-mill nonprofit, where you are required by law to sort of keep it at a minimum level.
Callers, our number is 702-221-7283. I want to go back to something that Crystal said about the parents in the rules.
Oh, yes.
And I'm going to say something that's going to probably be controversial, but...
Let's do this.
Would you say that you see more intact nuclear families in the rules?
Yes. You see a lot of that.
And why do you say that?
I think a lot of the lifestyle comes from the church. A lot of people are very religious, and we do find a lot of solace going to church, and that really does represent the core of our community. And in that setting, we definitely encourage people to think really hard, because everyone wants to get divorced at some point. It always gets really hard, right? But, we really encourage people to stick it out and keep trying. And you have all your friends and the people you work with. Everybody is within eyesight all the time. And so you just have a lot more people reinforcing those values than I would imagine in a city.
Okay. And so, listeners, we want to let you know about our Conservative Town Hall of North Las Vegas on Thursday, December 4th at 1870 West Craig Road. It will be our 3rd annual toy drive and Christmas party. We suggest that you RSVP and let us know, but you can bring a friend or two and bring unwrapped gifts for children and gift cards for teens. And we're also just throwing in a couple of books so that they can, because we believe in reading is fundamental. So, you're listening to Talk with a Conservative.
Basketball season is heating up, so stay in the game with Fubo TV. Get the NBA, NCAA, FIBA, and more. Get 7 days free at VegasScoreboardExpress.com. Don't get cabled. Get Fubo TV.
You're listening to Talk with a Conservative, where tradition meets truth. Thanks for joining us on Talk with a Conservative. We'll keep standing for liberty, faith, and family because America's worth the fight.
So, Crystal, you talked about it briefly when we were talking about the nuclear family, but I wanted to take it a step further. And have you noticed any differences or changes in the faith-based community in the rural areas, particularly in regards to homelessness?
No, I'm over in Winnemucca. We have a much smaller population than Scott does. We don't have any homeless facilities, but the churches do step in to help them. And like I said, we have a highly visible community. Everybody knows everybody. And when somebody puts a tent down and starts living in our city, we all take notice. And I imagine that they get a lot of interaction, but they don't tend to stay that often. Scott, how does it work out on your side?
Yeah, well, I mean, part of what you're looking at is there's differences in size. So Winnemucca is about 9,000 people right now, growing rapidly because of the Thacker Pass lithium mine. But Elko is about 24,000 people within the city of Elko, and then right across the ridge, we have about another 16,000. So we're over that 40,000 hump. We do have a lot of homeless, primarily in the summer, who make lifestyle choices. About 4 or 5 years ago, the city actually had to step in to donate some property, as a homeless encampment, that then these services can come in, and sort of help them out. Now in the winters, a lot of them do disappear. They go elsewhere. It's cold up there, in Elko. And, but we still do see a lot of homeless people that require, like here the last couple of days, we've dropped below zero at night. So the city and charities are scrambling to get them hotel rooms and whatnot up there. Now on the faith-based side, a lot of the faith-based, stuff is behind those charities. But we also have a very rich, faith-based community generally. Some of you might know last August, only the third Mormon temple in Nevada opened up in Elko. You know, we had the governor up there, the lieutenant governor. You know, it's a very strong faith up there. You know, they're actively involved in our very rich charity environment. Elko has more 501c3 nonprofits devoted to charity than any place I've ever seen. It's just insane, the number of these. And of course, they're all holding their fundraising dinners on the same weekend in February. But you know how that goes.
For accredited investors watching shifts in consumer behavior, the Zero Proof Spirits category has become a notable data point. It's been posting steady double-digit growth, and retailers have been expanding shelf space for alcohol-free options. One of the early brands in that space is RK Zero Proof, offering non-alcoholic versions of whiskey, vodka, rum, gin, and tequila. The company has opened conversations with verified accredited investors under Rule 506C. More information is available at rkzeroproof.com/investinrk.
Hey, Sam, I've got a new project. Wildfire zone job with strict codes.
You need Trex Refuge, ignition-resistant decking that slows flame spread and gives homeowners added confidence when it matters most.
And durability?
It's still Trex. Low-maintenance boards that won't rot, warp, or splinter. And homeowners love knowing it's backed by a 50-year limited residential warranty.
Let's do it.
Introducing Trex Refuge. Built for beauty. Tested for fire. Performance engineered for your life outdoors. Learn more at Trex.com.
It's funny because we actually have a lot of charity here through our churches. Because the church we attend, it's actually not too far from here. It's Bright Angel Church of Christ. We've actually had our minister on here in the past. And we also we feed the homeless at the rescue mission. We provide food for the homeless. We have other activities, things like that. We actually also just fed a bunch of teenagers. And we do this also. You know, so it's like there's charity that's given out by the churches. Unfortunately, the church membership, we have a strong church, but our church membership, generally speaking, has actually declined. And it's like that's really sad. We should not let the government, who takes so much of the resources, the donations, the money, your tax money, when churches do it far cheaper and much more effective. One thing I noticed with the rural areas is that gasoline must really affect you, the prices. Because you talk about driving back and forth, and Dave would have this too, because we go to Mesquite periodically and Boulder City, and for that's a long trip. But you guys, geez, it's like you're using a tank of gas every time you travel.
Oh, yeah. No, 3 or 4 hours out to a farm to deliver a piece of equipment, that's pretty much standard in northern Nevada. And that is one thing, when you watch places like California raise their gas tax up to $5, $6, $7 a gallon, and city people think, I can give up a little for the greater good. And you're driving 15 miles a day. Like, people like us, it's, several hundred miles, and it's not for fun. We're growing food to feed the nation. So we're not burning fossil fuels because we like to.
Yeah, and I can actually give you a good example, because this in my view at least is something else where government perceptions of the rurals are horribly wrong. One of the problems with these distances is, if we're driving, if I'm driving from Wells to Ely, like I did this morning, I mean, that's over 2 hours and there's nothing. There's no gas, no nothing. But when I was at the census, that was right when the push for electric vehicles came up, and electric vehicles don't work in the rurals. They just won't hold a charge for the distances. And I did a little thing for the Census Bureau, Yamba River Reservation I had to reach, which was about 3.5 hours for me. There was simply no way for me to get down there, charge an electric vehicle, and get back in the 8 hours the Census Bureau wanted me to spend to go out and present them. It was absolutely impossible. And that's a good example of sort of a misunderstanding, because the perception is, well, you know, you got electricity, you can run electric vehicles, except it doesn't work.
You know, I just want to mention that when you're out in the rurals and you can get this attitude that you're forgotten, right? And you're disenfranchised, and you're like, all the government programs either go to Reno or Vegas, right? And when you think about this on the political realm, you know, here in the southern Nevada, where other than Amadei, everybody else is a Democrat, right? So it seems to me like they want to propagate that a little bit, the Democrats, because that keeps the votes. Because what happens with disenfranchisement is they don't come out and vote, right? So why can't we get to the 90, 95% out in the rurals, which is what we need? And if we can get 90 or 95% out in the rurals, we can beat Stephen Horsford, and we can keep, you know, like I said, 6 counties in this district. Absolutely. Right. And they're rural counties. But if you think about the evilness of, politics, let's say, well, they feel disenfranchised because government programs don't come into the rurals, and then they don't vote, which plays right into the Democrat hands.
Yeah, and I can give you an actually interesting example of this, because again, it gets back to seeing how stuff is done. So I'm working with a nonprofit now that's trying to get a permanent building for a food bank out there in rural northeastern Nevada. And the problem is they're located in one of the few places that has infrastructure, has buildings, a town that's primarily inhabited by people in the mine industry. So it's got one of the highest per capita incomes in the state, but who they're actually serving is this whole range of people in these census tracts around them, where there's no infrastructure and has high levels of poverty, has low income. The problem is, for federal grants, the federal government can't see that, because it's based only on the census tract the supplier is located in, because it's based on a model from back east, where these census tracts are a couple miles across. You get out here in rural Nevada, and you have census tracts that are 100 miles side to side.
Let me apologize for that, because I think I told you before, I was the ACOM for half of Northern California. And ACOM is the Area Census Office Manager. So that's the highest ranking, if you will, census person in the field. Mm-hmm. My boss was at the, my micromanaging boss, I'll put it that way. Well, it was back at headquarters, if you will. Mm-hmm. But it's like, it was half of Northern California, above the Golden Gate up to the Oregon border, the Pacific Ocean, we know what that is, going over to like I-5. And it's like we had a lot of the tribal areas, the Hopi, Indians and different reservations. There's stories we need to talk about that we've had, mm-hmm. And the fun with that. But it's like, the census is basically more geared toward counting people, easy to count. So it's like Oakland and San Francisco and Seattle, things like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, in an urban environment.
Yes.
And the whole dynamic. I mean, some of the stuff we went to, of course, this was during COVID when I was working, but we had a thing where we weren't getting the levels of recruitment for enumerators who go out and actually do the count. My job was more diplomacy, as Garland knows. But the interesting thing is I'm having conversations with people back in LA that are telling me, well, we got this census tract that we're not getting any people in. And one of the things is like, well, Nevada has 30% unemployment rate. Why can't you get people in this census tract to apply for the census? I'm like, that census tract has a small town of about 2,000 people. The majority of people work there are miners, and the mines didn't shut down during COVID. They're ranchers, which didn't shut down because then the cattle would starve, right? And what are you going to do? Combine them to the bunkhouse? They're actually better off being outside. Or they worked for the BLM or the fisheries or the forestry department. So none of these people are going to take census jobs to begin with, and none of them are shut down. There's not a 30% unemployment rate out here. And they couldn't see it thinking about that in a perspective from an urban LA or an urban Portland or Washington, D.C.
So as we're wrapping up, I have 2 questions. So I need you guys to briefly answer this question, or maybe we'll skip it, but are there any other rural issues that should be addressed? And was there any particular reason why you wanted to discuss this topic this evening?
I'm kind of thinking like we're coming off like a bunch of whiners. So I do want to say we're independent. We can take care of ourselves. But the big reason Scott and I are down here is because we really want to see the Nevada legislature come closer to balance. And the urban areas are way outnumbering us. So we want to come down here and talk about, there's some other people in the state, some other industries, some other things to be serviced. We want you guys to think about us, and it'll make the state better overall.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with that 100%. We need to get the vote out. We need to get the legislature balanced. And there's some evidence based on the USDA does this yearly thing called Rural America at a Glance that comes out. And the last couple of years have actually been tracking an uptick in population growth. So Thanks for having us on here.
Okay, we want to thank our guests this evening, Crystal Newton and Scott Kowalski of 775 Alive for joining us. We also want to thank retired Lieutenant Colonel Dave Flippo for being our special co-guest.
Always a pleasure. Always a pleasure.
And we didn't have any callers, so no thanks to you, callers.
I know. Monday Night Football. What are you going to do?
But we do want to thank our loyal listeners who make it their priority to tune in every Monday evening. And so we want to thank you all. And next week, our guest will be City Councilwoman Carrie Cox, running for re-election. And so we just want to say God bless you and God bless America.
Well, we broke down in Greenville in the middle of a hayfield, but a Bud Light truck pulled up and helped us out. So we headed up to Philly, partied down like real hillbillies, brought the music mafia and rocked it out. Oh, and Chippewa's where we go when we're up in Buffalo. Don't you know those Yankees drink enough to drown? Yeah, we're coming to your city. Gonna play our guitars and sing you a country song.
Introducing new Trex Refuge. Decking engineered for wildfire-prone regions. Ignition resistant. Built to slow flame spread. Designed to meet strict wildfire code requirements. With Trex Refuge, fire resistance isn't a compromise, it's a given. You still get the durability and low maintenance Trex is known for, backed by a 50-year limited residential warranty. New Trex Refuge. Built for beauty, tested for fire. Performance engineered for your life outdoors. Learn more at Trex.com, subject to local code. Consult your builder or inspector.
Blaze the web and stay ahead. CC Communications delivers lightning-fast internet built for everything you do online, from streaming and gaming to remote work and virtual hangouts. We're the connection that never slows down. No limits, no lags, just pure speed. Upgrade to CC Communications, because fast is just the beginning.
Visit ccc.net for speed that keeps up with your world.
Introducing new Trex Refuge. Decking engineered for wildfire-prone regions. Ignition resistant. Built to slow flame spread. Designed to meet strict wildfire code requirements. With Trex Refuge, fire resistance isn't a compromise, it's a given. You still get the durability and low maintenance Trex is known for, backed by a 50-year limited residential warranty. New Trex Refuge. Built for beauty, tested for fire. Performance engineered for your life outdoors. Learn more at Trex.com, subject to local code. Consult your builder or inspector.